District regular board meeting, West Mifflin 15122. Meeting to begin at 7 p.m. Opening exercises, pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Maher.
Here.
Alexandrov.
Here.
Bennett.
Here.
Engler.
Here.
Stelnick.
Here.
Marshall.
Here.
Mattis.
Here.
DeCenzo.
Here.
And Blazevich.
Here. Presentations.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have 3 presentations tonight. The first one is the Student Board Representative Report.
Good evening.
Good evening, yes. National Honor Society recently inducted new members for the 2020 school year, and they are continuing to reach out to the local Pittsburgh Community Food Bank for more volunteering dates. Our Triad Music Honor Society initiated a new community service project to reach out to a local retirement home and alleviate the effects of COVID-19. They are planning a pen pal system between the residents and the students, as well as looking into donating board games and puzzles to help with quarantine isolation. The overall purpose is to provide a deeper sense of community for those residents unable to interact with friends and family because of this virus. Also, all class officers are developing a social media platform for each grade level to boost student morale during these times. Each account would represent each graduating class as they move up through high school, providing increased peer interaction, information accessibility, and school spirit. Lastly, for my part of the section, the senior class officers are working on yard signs for each student in the class of 2021, along with t-shirts.
Unfortunately, 2 events we had planned, the senior dance and the light up night, were canceled due to COVID. However, things look bright as we were planning to have prom at the Carnegie Science Center near the end of May. And finally, the high school has planned a website that integrates the entire West Mifflin community, news stations, and it's planned to promote local businesses and activities. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
Well, before these gentlemen sit down, West Mifflin Area School District has 2 certificates of recognition for both of them. The first one is for Aiden Blazevich. And Corey Sanchez.
I think we all want to thank our student board representatives for the rest of the school year. Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Presentation B, January is School Director Recognition Month. We'd like to thank these elected school directors for their time, dedication, and effort they give year-round to do what is necessary to ensure our schools remain a pathway to a promising future and for making the success of our children their priority. Each school board member has a certificate at their seat. Thank you very much. Presentation C is Anthony Ditka from Dinsmore and Shoulder, Bond Council. Mr. Ditka.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm Anthony Ditka. I'm from Dinsmore. I serve as the school district bond counsel, and I'm here to discuss the resolution that appears on your agenda at 6A2. Last week, I think you got a presentation from Alicia Reich-Henry from PNC Capital Markets. So she was giving you the numbers end of things, the math, and this is the legal end to implement the refinancing of your 2011 A notes and your 2012 bonds. So what the resolution says, and it's very long, but what the resolution says in a nutshell is it authorizes the school district to issue its 2021 general obligation bonds for the purpose of refunding those 2011 A notes and 2012 bonds, but only if you can achieve debt service savings of at least 2%. That's 2% of the debt service that's on the old 2 series. in the ad. It authorizes the execution of a purchase contract with PNC Capital Markets. So if the market's in the right place and the school district can get those savings, PNC will sell the bonds, and then it'll be incumbent upon the school district to sign a contract with them that you're going to sell them your bonds, and they're going to place them with that wide universe of people out there to purchase them. It authorizes the establishment of a sinking fund, it appoints a sinking fund depository. The district has traditionally used Wells Fargo as its sinking fund depository. There's no reason to make a change. They're one of the best providers in the country, and so we are keeping them in the resolution. And the sinking fund is a requirement of state law. It used to be that you would put 1/6 and 1/12 of your debt service payments in there, meaning 1/6 of each semi-annual interest payment and 1/12 of your annual principal payment. So it counts on a lot of activity. But that's written under a law that was done in 1972. Now your sinking fund only sees activity twice a year. When Mr. Esper issues a wire to Wells Fargo to pay all the bondholders on your two semi-annual interest payment dates. So it is a requirement of state law to have that account with Wells Fargo, but in all candor, it's very, very little activity. Fourth thing the resolution does is it authorizes me, as your bond counsel, to do a filing on your behalf with the State Department of Community and Economic Development. Now, those of you who were here a couple of years ago when I made this presentation, we remember that anytime a local government, school, county, municipality is going to borrow money here in the Commonwealth, it has to be approved by DCED. They're not approving the substance of it. They're not questioning your desire to refinance. They're questioning the process. So the process started when we ran an advertisement in the Post-Gazette a week ago, summarizing this resolution for any member of the public who wanted to come see it. If you act on this tonight, I'll take a signed copy of this, a signed copy of the statement that you're within your legal borrowing capacity, which you are, and I'll package those two things up with the proofs of publication of that ad and a second ad that I'll place tomorrow that says you acted on this resolution. Package all Secretary to do all things necessary to close on the issue. So bonds will sell and we will close, and this is the only necessary documents. Not unlike when you buy a house or a car and you actually sign things, days later. Finally, it just codifies some procedures for continuing disclosure. Continuing disclosure has been the law for many years, but it really became enforced in 2015. And so the last several pages of this are just some protocols that you'll follow when doing your annual disclosure. You're already doing them, so this is sort of belt and suspenders, but it's a good idea, and PNC is asking for it. It's not my requirements there. So again, that's longer than I usually make for these presentations, but this is particularly long. It's probably 60 pages, so I wanted to make sure you had at least a brief overview. Any questions for me? I'll be hanging around because I do need your signatures after the meeting. So if something comes up, but it comes up on the agenda, park right there. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Addendum items?
Mr. President, we have two addendums for tonight's agenda. Under number 9, professional personnel. Under letter A, leave of absence, it's recommended the board approve the request for an unpaid leave for employee number 84 until April 29th, 2021. And under 9E, other, it is recommended the board approves the motion to terminate Richard Pritchard in accordance with the separation and release agreement as presented to reduce costs of the police force.
Do I have
We ask the board to approve those two addendums.
a motion to add the addendum item?
Motion. Second.
Motion from Mr. Bennett, second from Mr. DeCenzo. Any questions or comments? We put them at the end then?
Yeah, we'll put them on the back.
Okay.
Roll call.
Sorry. Roll call.
Aher,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett.
Yes.
Ingber,
Yes.
Stelnick,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
DeSenza,
Yes.
Blazevich.
Yes. Addendum items we add at the end of the agenda. Number 4, hearing the citizens. In order to speak at this time, this is for public comment. In order to speak at this time, the following must be met. Must be a West Milford, Whitaker, or Duquesne resident. Matter must have been discussed through the proper education channels. Direct comments to the board president and or superintendent, and remarks will be limited to 3 minutes. We will be setting a timer for that. Mr. Uhas? And if y'all please, when everybody comes up, please state your name and address, please.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and talk. My name is Mark Uhas at 16 Unit Drive. Well, I'm coming up here for two things. First one is there's been a lot of talk out there, social media about the All Sports Booster Program. So I'm coming up here to answer some questions, also give you my side of things. And before I start, I've been involved in West Mifflin in youth athletics and sports for a long time. My son's 29 years old. Football, I helped Dave DeRamo and Bo Pelican and Trudy Melzer start back up the old West Mifflin Trojan football program. I worked with the West Mifflin baseball with these kids. I've worked with kids since I've been involved in this community. And a couple of years ago, I came to this board and I came with an idea about an all sports booster group and what it would be for, what it would be used for, and what its mission statement behind it is. It was meant to go out and help raise money for our student athletes and their programs for two things. One, to help some of these groups that they have and have nots, and the third or second is because to try to help our taxpayers relieve a little bit, so when you're raising money, so they don't come to the school board to ask for money for certain equipment and stuff like that. So it's all about the kids. It's out there to help out their athletic programs, help out the kids, take some of the burden off the school board and the residents of West Mifflin. And we had this going, and COVID came and kind of put everything on the back burner a little bit. But one of the things that happened when we started things back up this fall is we started to have our programs. Like football started going, girls tennis started, at golf we had a lot of our programs, and soccer going. And all these booster groups can't hold fundraisers. Some of them couldn't have a concession stand, had no way to raise their money. And I looked at it, so what did I do? But I've gone, I didn't, there's all of our mom and pop stores and pizza shops and everything else, they have the money, I can't go to them. So I used my own network, my own friends, and I called the people like Macero Corporation. I called Franjo Construction. I also called Precision Electric, Smyers Group, and I have a few other ones that have committed to raising money, and I bought in over this time a little over $4,000. I gave out stuff to our football program for their meals. I gave out stuff to our girls tennis, they can buy suits and warm-ups. I gave stuff to girls money to basketball so they can buy their shooting shirts. I gave money to boys basketball. I also going to buy the radar gun that the girls softball coach wants. So I'm there to help.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. And
the time is up.
well,
I know you
I'm like
want to hear
two-part.
that point, to get to the point.
yeah, I'm a two-part thing. Okay. So but I raised this money and did all this for the kids. Now the second half of it is this. Mr. Souls, back in October, did you not call me and ask me if I would, about the booster group, I would come up and meet with you and go over the booster group?
Yes.
And we met, I brought up a file, I brought up all the receipts and the deposits and all that, and showed them to you, went over it. Mr. Esper was also in the room with us, did I not? I also left with you the login and password for the account. So if anybody wanted to go in and look at it, go and look at it online. And I left this material, Joe, how long did it sit in your office?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And I never called him, he called me. because he knew I had to go get it audited and I had to do the taxes for it. Kept 2 weeks and sat up there. As soon as I pick it up, all of a sudden you have a few school board members up there that I have, I'm running, I'm ignoring them, I'm not bringing anything up to them, and look at it. And I ran in a live meeting accusing me of, they called her, or called that individual and said that I ripped them up because I wouldn't give them a refund. We in agreement on that? Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
No, I'm gonna finish here. I know.
Are we gonna allow everybody to speak over?
I can't.
We are allowing.
Your time is up. Mr.
No, this is important, right? That's the most important part. I get a phone call from a detective from West Michigan that I was being investigated for this. And Joe, I thought you said 6 minutes, Joe.
Mr. Gatos.
Okay, and the school board member filed a police report on me, accusing me of not giving these seniors their money, or returning, or ripping off seniors, and also ripping off the program. And then the detective called me and told me this, and he said, once I meet with them, I'll get back. And so whatever you need, let me know, I'll have it ready for you. And then, the police officer, after 2 weeks go by, I called the detective up. The detective said to me, I said, can you get back to me? He goes, Mark, he goes, sorry, he goes, I didn't get back to you because there was nothing there. There's really nothing there, he goes, because the person he went and talked to made the claim said they had no evidence of me doing anything, or no evidence of a senior calling. And the whole thing is, I come back, I says, and that's something somebody says out there and everybody else makes it feel like somebody's doing something wrong.
I'm happy to have a conversation with you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you talk to people, when you want something, you treat them with respect. And what I've done, and what I'm doing for these kids, and anybody else out there doing it, if you want something, you treat people with respect. Okay? There's a way of being professional. Yes. You want to call and you want me, that's all right. I'm more than happy to be with any one of you. Anytime.
Thank you, Mr. Yohal.
But have to do it the right way.
Thank you,
It's
Mr.
not on
Yohal.
social media.
Next resident, Diane Spinessa. Just want to remind you, you'll have 3 minutes.
That's not even fair. It's really not. There's no precedence now. There's no precedence.
Sorry, but I have to be cautious. Diane Sinesic, 2803 Winning Lane Extension. Okay, one question under presentation from Mr. Ditka. When you guys find out, what's this going to cost the school district to do this? The next question I have is on page 2, finance number 5, the incentive for early retirement. What is the incentive? It'd be nice to know what the incentive is being offered for early retirement. On page 3, under purchasing. Okay, I read in the Post-Gazette plus online about the money that's being allocated to the school districts within the state of Pennsylvania. West Mifflin has an allotment of $3,2,166, I believe, if I remember correctly. So that money used to be used for specific purposes, and I would like to know and verify that all care money, all COVID money is in a separate line item so that we can keep track that it's being used appropriately, just in case the state would come in and audit that money, that we're not using it to balance the budget or anything like that. So for question under contracting number 5, if this item, this Ed Insight coaching, is for the purpose of teaching and helping the teachers in the district get through software and to make education easier for the students, rather than that money coming out of the general fund, wouldn't that fall under the COVID relief money? That needs to be investigated. The other thing is, I heard on the workshop meeting that I couldn't attend that the borough got their money from Kennywood. Have we investigated why we haven't gotten our half of it? Did it all go to the borough and they just neglected to give us our half of that money? On page 7, under D, hiring and transfer, it says to approve the administrator's reorganization plan and transfer effective February 1st. What is that plan? I don't see anybody voting for something that they don't know what it is exactly used for, or what the purpose of it, and who is moving from here to there. And the other question I have is under invoices, item G and item H, the additional professional services, got over $50,000 for these two charges, plus an additional $240 under their November, which there should be an explanation for. And this district doesn't have any money, and we're spending all this money, but we're watching costs, and what are these services?
Thank you, Mrs. Danesic. What, do you want to address that?
Sure. Our invoices G and H are, one is for the custodial litigation, the other one is for the middle school property that we're litigating. And the reason for the delay, this was for basically the whole year. We tried to do it quarterly. Because of COVID, we weren't in the office. We did it at the end of the year. We will do it quarterly from here on out. I've spoken with our office. And the extra $200 and some, Ms. Danesic, is always cost. It's never additional legal fees. I'd have to look at it. Usually it's like postage or certified letter costs or FedEx or something like that.
So the first one you're saying is for the
Mrs.
stagnant.
Mrs. Danesic.
No, you let him go. Let's not go.
I understand.
Right.
Please sit down.
No,
Please sit
I want
down.
my question finished answered.
We
You
don't
don't
have,
even answer the rest of my
we
questions.
don't have to address your question. This is public comment, not question and answer. I'm trying to be nice here.
You're trying to be nice.
Yes.
Boy, you spend all this money and you won't give your residents an answer to a question. So I'm going to do what I did the last bill, because Dr. Costanza's lawsuit shouldn't have anything to do with our lawyers. You have outside counsel. So if anybody here is my witness, here is my right to know for the breakdown of those two bills. Please do them appropriately, or I'll take it to the state, like I did the last bill.
And we won because it was properly redacted.
No, you didn't win, because they had to unredact areas.
It was-
There was some that, it was a win for me and a win for you. Do it right.
It was a loss for the taxpayers because they had to pay for that legal service.
No, it's a loss because you people are overbilling this school district. Because they're a bunch of fucking thieves.
Oh.
Mrs. Danesic, please.
Whoa.
You need to be removed, please. Joe, please see Ms. Danesic out.
Really? Are you serious?
This is, listen, we need to treat people civilly. We don't have language like that in our school board meetings. I'm sorry. You have to go. You have to go. I'm sorry.
What are you gonna do, have me arrested?
I'm going to ask our security to escort you out of the building. I'm
Sure,
sorry.
I'll stand at the end of the auditorium and listen.
No, you have to leave the premises.
No, I do not.
Mrs.
I have to
Danesic.
leave the auditorium. I do not have to leave the building. challenge me on that, because I'll take you to court. And try answering my questions.
All right. Next up, Teresa, sorry, I want to mispronounce your last name. Seckley? Okay. I just want to remind you, you have 3 minutes. That obviously doesn't matter today.
Teresa Seckley, 110 Main Entrance Drive, West Mifflin. I'm just calling to find out what the plan is for the return of the kids. I hear talk of K through 3. We have K through 12, pre-K through 12 in the district. I have heard through the grapevine it's going to be 1 week, and then the next week another building, the next week another building. Like, that's another month that our kids are losing out on their education. I mean, remote learning is just not working for some of these kids, and getting them back to a full day is a priority of mine, especially for my own child with special ed. So I just hope that if we're going to send one grade back, why can't we just send them all? Other districts are operating 5 days a week, all day long, and our kids get 2 days, some 4 days, till 12 o'clock, 3 hours. It's not enough. These kids need to be in the building. So I just hope that if we're going to send the kids back, let them all go back together.
Yeah, we actually met today with our union leadership as we develop our plan. We've also got involved with our transportation department. There are some glitches we need to work out there, but there'll be an update this Friday as to how we're rolling that out.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Information items, there are none. Board Secretary, Business Managers Report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would respectfully request a motion second approval on the following items. Items 6A, Board of Directors, numbers 1 through 6 on pages 1 and 2. There are 4 that were not discussed at the work session last week. Number 2 is a motion to approve Resolution 2102, and that is the bond refinancing. Number 4, it's recommended the board approve recycling of all outdated technology in the district. If that would happen to come at a cost, we will bring that back next month or the month after, but we're going to try to do that with no cost. Number 5, it's recommended that the board approve a public sale of all the unused items in Emerson, and that's per public school code. Once we find out a date, we will properly advertise that sale. Number 6, we did pass our meetings will begin at 7 p.m. So that is a change from currently operate that was added since the work session. And that's all the changes from last week.
Thank you, Mr. Esper. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Is that Mr. Mattis? Mr. Marshall, Mr. Cosenzo, any questions or comments?
I have a question on number 2. Maybe Mr. Ditch can answer it, but when we talked last week, there was no, unless it's a 2% savings, we just don't go through with it, correct?
Correct. There has to be a minimum of 2% net present value debt service savings. Again, that's a floor, not a ceiling. So right now, if we could do the bonds today, that is the number's considerably higher. It's closer to 7%. So, the hope is if you act favorably on this tonight, the hope is we're going to dash to get a preliminary official statement together and get ourselves to market, so we can maximize your savings, because right now the market's fairly volatile. But 2% is a floor, not a ceiling. We're going to get you as much as we can. And Alicia's on it.
Just to answer the question that was raised a little bit ago, obviously there's fees involved in this, but the savings will outweigh the price tag tremendously.
And again, that savings, that 2% is net, so it's after all of those costs. And so at this point, I couldn't tell you what the savings are because we haven't sold the bonds yet. But, I think in the presentation that Alicia showed you last week, you're talking about saving, $500,000 after paying the costs. So what those costs are probably are a fraction of that, I don't know what the bond insurance group is, something like that. legal fees went are a very small fraction of that number. But what you get as net present value, that 2% is after all those costs are already accounted.
And in your professional opinion, this is win-win?
Absolutely.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Bill. Mr. Ditzai, this does not extend at any time to that bond, correct?
No, it stays within the parameters that already exist for your 11A notes and your 12 bonds. So we're staying in the parameters. We're just taking higher rates and turning them into lower rates.
Thank you.
And look, just since we'll round this out, the 2011s have slightly higher rates on them. So the savings isn't split evenly between the two transactions. It's more on the 11As than on the 12s, but in the aggregate, you're getting this big number. Since you called me up, I'm going to do something. I forgot when I had my presentation. I always like to thank Joe did a great job. Christian does a great job. I've worked with their firm several times. I rely on them for a lot of things. This doesn't get to you without their help, and so I was remiss in not thanking them.
Thanks for what you do, Mr. Dick.
Mr. Dick, gray hair runs in your family, I'll tell you that.
I'm clean and mean now. You see me 3 weeks ago. I look like my 18-year-old. So yeah, I got cleaned up.
Any other questions? No. Roll call?
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
No on 6A3, yes on everything else.
okay. Bennett,
I don't know where 683 is, but I'm good on all of them, Joe. Joe,
Where is 683 at?
He's right.
It's
right.
where is it?
It's the steel center item.
I thought we were on B 1 through 6.
No. We're on 6A.
Because that's the one that Mr. Ditka was just discussing with the bond issue for us to vote on. On 6A,
We're voting on 6A, items 1 through 6.
6A2. 6A2, right?
that we're voting on all the items.
We're voting on all items 1 through 6. 6A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Goes to page 2.
6A2.
Yes, Joe, it's a yes.
Okay.
Okay. Engler,
No to one, yes to everything else.
Castelnick,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
DeCenzo,
Yes.
Blazevich.
Yes.
Mr. President, items 1 and 3 passed on an 8-to-1 vote. Everything else passed on a 9-to-0 vote. Moving along to B, Finance, items 1 through 6 on page 2. Items 1, 2, and 4 were discussed last week. 3, 5, and 6 were new, so I'll briefly explain them. Since the meeting, we did get a request for property tax refunds for the month of January. So that's an addition to the ones from December, so they are listed separately. Number 5 is the early retirement incentive with the professional employees of the West Mifflin Federation of Teachers Union. And number 6 is Resolution 2103, which provides and establishes rates of compensation for the school district current real estate tax collectors during the term of 2022 through 2025. They will be running this year for re-election for a term that begins at the beginning of next year. This action has to take place by February 15th prior to an election year.
Thank you, Joe. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Mrs. Stoneman, Mrs. Ahern? Any questions or comments?
On number 5, are we allowed to discuss what the potential savings are with the early retirement? Although, based on X amount of teachers retiring, just to show that this is an increasing expenses.
I think that what the basics behind it is, if someone retires, they're at the top of the scale, we're rehiring at the lower end of the scale usually, even at a master's level. It's a savings to the district. We do this to try to just create cost savings for the district. And it's been done in the past several times. It's done routinely throughout school districts. And we work closely with the union. I see Mr. Woods here. Thank you for working with us. And he's been working with our administrative team. Just, we don't know how many people will choose to do that. Of course, it's a teacher's decision. And so based on that, we'll know the cost savings. I believe there's a date certain they have to tell us if they're going to take it, and we should be able to report that then, Mr. Marshall.
And I appreciate Mr. Woods, it's, the union folks working so well with administration and our solicitor. Thank you so much.
I have a question on number 6. This is the raise that we're giving to the tax collector, correct?
Yes, it is.
It seems to be kind of open-ended. Do we have an amount?
Now, yeah, we discussed that in executive session
Okay,
last week.
okay. I just didn't see it on here. I was.
You good, Mr. Bennett?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call?
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Stoughton,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
Blazevich.
Yes.
Moving along, 6C, purchasing and contracting, numbers 1 through 6 on pages 2 and 3. Items 4, 5, and 6 were added since the work session last week. Item 4 is a contract for transportation auditing services with PASBO at a cost of $7,500. Number 5 is the $4,000 for 20 hours of Ed Insight coaching. And number 6 is to approve an agreement with the Consortium of Public Education to be part of their Partner Up program as presented. These items were all discussed during the committee meetings. However, they weren't on the actual agenda itself.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Marshall, second by Mr. Bennett. Questions or comments? Roll call?
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Stoughton,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
Blazevich.
Yes.
Item 16, minutes, number 1 on page 3.
Do I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Mrs. Costello, and a second by Mrs. Ahern. Questions or comments? Roll call?
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Stoughton,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
Blazevich.
Yes.
Item E, reports on pages numbers 1 and 2, actually 1A and 1B on pages 3 and 4. I apologize, items 1 through 6 on pages 1 through 5 on pages 3 and 4.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Mrs. Engler, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Marshall? Questions or comments? Roll call?
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Stoughton,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
and Blazevich.
Yes.
6F, numbers 1 through 2 on pages 4 and 5.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mrs. Costello,
Second.
second by Mr. DeSenzo. Any questions or comments?
I got a question. Joe, in number 1, the second to the last, Liberty Mutual Fieldhouse Restroom, $475. And then the last one in December is for $11,195. I'm assuming that's for the restroom that was vandalized?
Yes.
What does that cover? And wouldn't insurance cover that if it's a deductible?
Yeah, but these are revenues subtracted from expenditures. So when we have a claim, I created some string line item to track the expenses and the revenue. So those were actually checks that we got from the insurance company after our deductible.
Okay, so this isn't a debit, it's a credit.
Yes, yeah, it's a credit to an expenditure.
Okay. Thanks. No further questions, Mr. President.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call?
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Pistonik,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis.
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
Lacy.
Yes.
6G invoices 1 through 5, on pages 5 and 6, which include the P cards. We do have 1E, that actually had changed. There was a mistake on the bill, and I was not on the agenda last week. That's just a monthly retainer for the solicitor.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Is that Mr. Bennett?
No,
it's me.
Mr. Mattis, second by Mr. DeSenzo. Questions or comments? Roll call.
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Pistonik,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
and Lacy.
Yes.
Item 6H, 1 and 2, on page 6. Now that we're back to live meetings, we will be acknowledging our executive sessions the month after instead of the month during. And so we did have an executive session on December 2nd to discuss personnel legal issues.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mrs. Ahern,
Second.
second by Mr. Mattis. Questions or comments? Roll call.
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Pistonik,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
and Lacy.
Yes. Number 7, district operations.
With district operations, Mr. President, it's recommended the board approve the superintendent's back-to-school plan effective February 8th, 2021 as presented. However, from the work session to now, the plan is still going to be modified a little bit, but we do want to go with February 8th as a hard date to bring back in-person learning, five days a week for students.
Do I have a motion? Motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Alexandro, Mr. Marshall, second by Mr. DeSenzo. Questions or comments?
I have a comment. The health and safety plan that Mr. Sewell presented refers to our athletic health and safety plan, which I voted against in August. I thought it was too vague and specifically stated that face coverings will not be worn for practice or competing. It also refers to WPIAL and PIA guidelines, which essentially there are none in place, and it pushes it back on the district to make their own policies. My concern with a full return to school is that we are not taking the same precautions after school that we take during the day. And I'm concerned that we will return to normal and only have to inevitably cause us to close back down if we have exposure. So I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Mr. Souls, to your knowledge, have we had any outbreaks in our athletic program?
I can't.
Have we had any outbreak or issues with our athletic program
Well,
against its health?
I don't think we've had an outbreak. I mean, I think we've been relatively safe. I mean, we've had some bumps, but I would not say we had any worse than any other district.
Okay, well, so we haven't had a situation where one of our athletic programs was forced to quarantine or shut down?
We had a couple of outbreaks with the athletic teams, but again, they were still wearing their masks at that point. Before the break, it was mandatory by the WPIL and PIA. These teams had to wear masks. Since we came back, they took that regulation off those athletes because the referees weren't enforcing that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, I believe, and I want to apologize, that the agenda that passed out, I think had the February 1st date, that was changed late last night correct date is on the website agenda, but unfortunately, what was handed out this evening was the wrong version. It is February 8th, which is being voted on.
So the ones that were out there were, the ones that were.
Yes,
set out-
well, that's what Mrs. Denison was February 1st.
Yeah.
The ones we got.
Was it?
Our take.
Oh, okay. Then I don't apologize.
Okay. We apologize if it wasn't easy like that.
I rescind that apology.
I have one question, Mr. Souls. Are all students going to be required to go back to the building? Or will there still be an online program?
There'll still be a remote option. The only thing we're going to eliminate is the hybrid option.
Okay.
It's either come fully in person or full remote.
And from what I understand, there's going to be a parent survey going out for people to provide us their desired
Yes,
mode of education, and that's going to help us plan for, and depending on what that response rate is and what those responses are, there may be, that's going to help inform how we educate with in building and online, depending if there's a majority of students online or majority of students in the building. Am I right?
Correct. But the survey results is going to give us the data to make that decision as to how we are going to provide the remote learning with the in-person learning. Yes.
I did want to make one more comment too. This is probably the appropriate place. I worked with a parent, or I was going back and forth with a parent for the last month or so. A few parents. And we updated our WMASD.org website. Under the COVID tab, there's a tracker now with COVID cases that the school district is aware of, whether they be confirmed or probable, or based on the building. So now we have one place to go. I think a lot of schools have this. And as we want to make sure that parents have all of the information on a regular basis as we move students back to the buildings, that they understand what COVID case rates are within our different facilities. So that is published. It's live, I think, today.
Mrs. Welch, our principal at the high school, did an excellent job putting this together for us. It looks great. There's a lot of resources there, and that'll be updated weekly on Friday.
And that's under the COVID tab on the website. So this is a moving work in progress too, right?
Yes, yes.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call?
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
No.
Pistonik,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
Lakeridge.
Yes.
Mr. President, that motion passed on an 8-1 vote.
Superintendent's report?
As we continue, under A, student services, we have nothing. Under B, student activities, we have one, or I should say we have two. The middle school yearbook is doing 2 cells. Each of them are Hoagies, and that is to take place January through May and February through April. Under C, buildings and grounds. The first item listed was the Augustino wrestling tournament. That did not happen. That was during the state shutdown. And then we have the SAT testing at the high school. And we also have Claire Barton for baseball conditioning through the month of February and March. Those are items under 8.
Motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mrs. Ahern,
Second.
second by Mr. Mattis. Questions or comments?
Mr. Stoll, while we're allowing the kids to come back, are we gonna work towards allowing outside organizations to lease our facilities again, or is that something that's pretty far down the road?
That's definitely down the road. I think once we see the vaccinations taking place and the count going down, I think that's something we can talk about.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call?
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Pistonik,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
Lakeridge.
Yes. Number 9, professional personnel.
Yes, that's where we have our two addendums. Under A, leave of absence. It's recommended the board approve the request for an unpaid leave for employee number 84 until April 29th, 2021. Under D, it's recommended the board approve administrative reorganization plan and transfers effective February 1st as presented. Under E, there's two. The board approved the following student activity club sponsor for the second semester only, and that is the Poetry Club. And under other as well, number two, it is recommended the board approve the motion to terminate Richard Pritchard in accordance with the separation and release agreement as presented to reduce the cost of the police force.
Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Bennett. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mattis. Questions or comments? Roll call.
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
No on 9D, yes on everything else.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Pistonik,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
Blazevich.
Yes.
Mr. President, everything passed on a 9-0 vote with the exception of 9E, which passed on an 8-1 vote.
Non-certified personnel?
Yes, non-certified personnel, numbers 1 through 3 are employees asking for unpaid leave. Under B, resignation, general cafeteria worker at the middle school. Ms. Huzak has two positions with the district. She is only resigning to one position, and that is the 2-hour position she holds in the cafeteria. And we have nothing under retirements, hired and transferred. Under items 1 and 2, we're asking the board to approve 2 paraprofessional positions at a part-time rate, and also to approve and ratify Dylan Morton to be hired as a temporary district technology technician effective October 26th.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. DeSenza,
Second.
second from Mr. Marshall. Questions or comments? Roll call.
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Pistonik,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
Blazevich.
Yes. Athletic personnel?
We have nothing under A. Letter B, resignation. Recommend the board ratify the resignation of Ron Glass, middle school girls basketball coach. It's also recommended the board approve and ratify the resignation of Wade Brown, high school assistant football coach. Under C, hiring, it is recommended the board approve Daryl Carter to the post and position of middle school assistant track coach. Under other, it's recommended the board approve the following list of volunteer coaches for the varsity baseball, junior varsity, freshman baseball, and indoor-outdoor track and field.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Alexandrov,
Second.
second Mr. DeSenza. Questions or comments? I'll make a comment. I just want to extend my appreciation for volunteer coaches under D1 for volunteering their time to help our athletics. I think all of that is very much appreciated. So, you don't have paid positions for everybody, unfortunately, but we do appreciate folks taking time out of their day and helping our team. Roll call.
Ahern,
Yes.
Alexandrov,
Yes.
Bennett,
Yes.
Engler,
Yes.
Pistonik,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Mattis,
Yes.
Senzo,
Yes.
Blazevich.
Yes. 12 substitutes.
Mr. President, we have nothing under 12 substitutes or number 13 conferences. That will conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Souls. Board President's correspondence. As I noted earlier, I had a few exchanges with several parents about the COVID rates within the school districts. And therefore, we have since put on the webpage the COVID count tracker. 15 executive session discussion. We covered legal and personnel matters. Number 16, board reports. These were covered last week unless there are additional reports. Mrs. Costello?
Yes, Still Center doesn't have a meeting in January or July, but I wanted to recognize two students for their extra effort in the second quarter at Still Center. That was Quinn Causey in baking, and Tyler Main is in the health assistant program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Costello. Any other committee reports?
Mr. Blazevich,
Yes.
one thing I had discussed with Mr. Esper informally, that nice lady that was here earlier brought up about that $3 million grant. Joe, would you be able to just give a high-level summary of what that is, what we can do with it, with the length we can spend it based on what's out there?
Yeah, sure. First of all, grants are tracked accordingly. Every school district has to report quarterly what they're spending the money on. I keep every receipt, every PO, every ProSoft report for those to back it up. Sometimes they will ask, like the most recent PCCD grant, I had to fax them probably in 4 separate files, every single receipt check that I had. So it's almost impossible to spend money that you're not allowed to spend money on. This grant covers everything that the ESSER 1 grant covered, and it does cover additional things, and I don't have that with me. But it's a lot of safety and cleaning, remote learning. There's some cafeteria expenditures to feed our children. We continue to feed. I don't know, Mr. Sewell, can you remember off the top of your head?
Yeah, the ESSER 2 grant, it expanded a little bit more off the title categories. And like Mr. Exler said, it's a follow-up to the ESSER 1. It's over a 3-year period. But again, these funds that we get from the federal government, we cannot supplant. We can supplement, but we can't supplant. So we have to be careful as a district, as we're writing these grants, that we're not creating a burden to the district after the grant's over and with the money that will be exhausted at that point. So there's a lot more for our compensatory ed, those students who would need other assistance, and it's across the board. All students would be the big thing, I would think, from this grant as being a little bit different from the first ESSERs. But everything else is the same. And like I said, it's $3 million over 3 years, so there's a lot of professional development. There's a lot of tools and resources we can provide. And as we talk, we want this money to be educationally focused, not just buying things to have.
Definitely, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Any other committee business that we want to bring up here? I know we talked about recommendations last week. We had our Steel Center report, appreciate that. Solicitors report?
Thank you, Mr. Blazevich. I just want to touch base on what happened here earlier. I just want to inform everybody. So what happened was, as we all know, my position here at the district is a little different than most. Our confidentiality between the board members when we give legal advice is fundamental in my profession. As any of you have worked with a lawyer, you understand that. Ms. Danesic has asked repeatedly for our litigation bills. We redact those in accordance with the law. She didn't like that, so she appealed it to the state. We had to fight that through the state. They came back. There were some minor changes that they asked us to give her additional information. They were words like telephone and. So quite honestly, we're going to go through this again and again. She's now issued another right to know. We'll redact them in accordance with the law, as we always do. And I'm sure she'll appeal that again. So I apologize for the outburst that we all had to witness here tonight, but it's very unfortunate that things like that are meant and twisted. I have to do my job and protect the confidentiality. Many times we talk about litigation strategy, we talk about various things that we wouldn't want the opposing side to know going prior to any type of litigation. So I appreciate everyone bearing with us through that, and I hope that we can act better here in the future.
Me too. Thank you, Krisha. Any old business? Yes, Ms. England.
Speaking just like Kershaw and Outburst, I would like to discuss, how it's been over 90 days since the information I requested about the All-Star Sports Group has been given to me or any of us, to my knowledge. And considering the state of the year and how things have gone, most of the booster groups are not going to be starting back up. And under board policy 919, excuse me, we haven't gotten a copy of the audit, we haven't gotten a copy of anything, and I would like to make a motion to revocate the all sports booster group from all district activities until I get the information and the rest of the board gets the information to go over.
You will have to amend the agenda to add a motion. So you'll need a motion to amend the agenda to add that motion, and then you'll need the motion itself.
Okay, then I motion to amend the agenda.
To amend and state the motion.
Okay. I motion to amend the agenda as I want to make a motion to revocate the all sports booster group. I'm asking for the information that has been promised to the board over 90 days. Everybody's seen it except for us.
So I just want to be clear that you're asking that we as the district don't recognize them. We can't force them to dissolve.
I understand. Yes, just until we see the, basically the financials and who the board is, as it cannot be one individual collecting money and dispensing it however they see fit.
Yeah, but why didn't you go up and review the information that was in Mr. Esper's office for 2 weeks?
I was not answered as to when I could see the information.
Is that information available for us to see?
It was in the office.
I'm sorry.
It was in the office.
It was in the office?
Yes.
Oh, so we can't get it now?
No.
Mr. Nash, would it be appropriate for us to make copies of that information and distribute that?
We could, but it would be again, here for everyone to see, and then I would prefer you to go see it at the district and make copies to be disseminated. But yes, I mean, we could make a copy to house here, keep in a file in Joe's office as to the records for the all sports. That would not be an issue. And we could do that for all boosters, to ask them to provide that and keep that on file in Mr. Esper's office or up at the district admin office.
Didn't we talk 4 months ago that West Mifflin School District had nothing to do with the all sports booster?
That's what
It does, it has nothing to do.
I'm having a hard time on, they're not a school booster group.
They
So
use-
this board has no jurisdiction over anything that they do.
I agree with you, and I.
So the amount of time that we've spent on this is ridiculous. It's nonsensical. It doesn't we should not be spending time on this.
And our taxpayers
If you have an issue, with that individual
for these
group,
services.
you should go to one of their meetings.
Why can't you just talk to Mr. Uhas about this
Yes.
matter, and need a time to review the paperwork with him instead of dragging on here for 15 minutes?
Oh, well, I apologize for that.
Reach out to him.
Reach out to Mr.
Again,
Uhas.
the taxpayers of this district paid for these services, and it is upon us that we can request it. The problem
No,
is
they
that
didn't.
they
It's
don't.
not donated to
This is not
It's not the
services.
taxpayers to the board, let's be clear, no money from the all sports comes to the district. I want to be clear on that. We don't collect for them, we don't write checks for them. They are an outside organization, they're just like any volunteer organization that wants to go and collect money and provide donations to whatever cause they have. We just recognized that they were legally sufficient. We actually did not even pass the resolution to allow them for their small games of chance license when they came before the board some time ago. I have not reviewed their records. I know the comment was made that I did. In fact, I tried to read them that day with you when we were told they weren't there. I think Mr. Esper can confirm that I did not see those records.
You did not.
And so I have not seen them either. I don't really want to look at other people's financial records when we're not legally bound. It's not really good use of the lawyer's time to go look at them. But yes, you can request them, but I don't believe we have any authority to require this.
I think she's saying, and I hope I'm correct in saying that you guys donated your services in any effort to help them get that organization off the ground. I think she's insinuating that you charged the district for the time you spent on
We often do that. A lot of organizations and much larger organizations than this have come to board meetings, and when they're supporting a local community, even one of our boroughs, we'll file the proper paperwork with the state. It's just a lot easier when you're a lawyer filing that, or we'll give them some templates to work so they can develop their bylaws. That's what we did here when Mr. Uhas came and requested that. Someone in my office who does this stuff for us did do that for him. I assure you, we're not charged for this. It's not, you're not gonna see our town money bill for that. The only time that was in was under the retainer recently when this thing started to transpire here at the meetings and the requesting and trying to do some legal research to see if we were legally allowed to require them to give us these documents.
Gina, before we finalize this motion, can I just ask that we give it a chance to ask more time to get these documents from Mr. Uhas to satisfy our need to see that information, if he's willing to give that, provide that to us? Because one thing is, if this is a legitimate, reasonably run, well-organized organization, and they're willing to help our students, I'd hate to do anything to negatively
Well, that's what's happening. That's what's happening now. It has no chance to get off the ground because of the actions taking place now and in previous months leading up to this.
But if we get that information and it.
It was there.
But we did, I feel.
I'm not saying that it can't come back, it can't be reintroduced to us, but it was there.
I'm just saying the interested parties did not see it. So I think satisfying that, and if everything's good, then we will get behind that organization and support it. I have never seen it. I don't know if anybody else here has seen it. So I think we want to feel comfortable promoting that organization to make sure that it is, as it says it is, and they're following, whatever their bylaws are and whatnot. From a financial standpoint, we don't want to promote an organization.
Since I've been on the board, I was, and other board members who I know in other districts say, when you look at boosters, you look at all of them or none of them. You don't pick one out because you don't like somebody. I was involved in booster groups in the past. There were board members up here that didn't like me. They never, ever messed with football or girls soccer. My wife's president of it, she was president of football. I think this sets a bad precedent that either we treat everybody the same or we're picking on one person. Either we look at all the boosters, who I trust all of them, or we pick somebody out that say, somebody else gets in and hates somebody that's running a booster, let's pick on them. It's setting a bad precedent.
What's the policy, Gina, the policy you referenced?
911.
And what does it say?
It basically states that there are certain adherence that they have to do. They send an audit copy, the list of bylaws, the current officers and such at the beginning of the school year.
I believe they did send their bylaws and their list of officers to us, as per you have us. There was an email at one point that I believe had their bylaws.
We have their bylaws. We didn't have a list of officers.
And then they have to provide us an audit, and so that's not all the financials, that's their audit that they do yearly, which is why I believe that Mr. Uhas has told us that he came and got them to do the audit.
Yeah, see, I had told him that I would file the tax return, and then I spoke to Christian, she thought that would not, she didn't advise me not to do that, so I called to let him know that I was not gonna file the tax return on behalf of the organization because of my role in the district, and then he came up and took me to the CPA that day. So I apologize, Gina, if I didn't let you know that they were up, I thought everybody knew that they were sitting in my office.
I would like to resolve this issue. I do not, we have a motion on the floor. I would like to resolve this civilly without
We have a
any
motion
additional.
on the floor, one, and then we would need a second for a vote.
Do we have a second? There's no second. Do I have a second?
I'd like to see the information.
The motion fails to revocate Noel Sports Booster Group, which was what Ms. English wanted. I still think that let's work together to resolve this. I feel like this is something that the students could benefit from, and we should be working together to help everybody feel promoted. to promote it, and we should feel comfortable promoting it too, so. I just I want to give it some time, let us work on this together and give it some more time to hopefully resolve it.
I would echo though that Ms. Ziegler has a point. If we have a policy, we need to follow the policy, but we wouldn't just, also to Mr. Marshall's point, single out one organization. If we're gonna ask for that information in accordance with our policy, it should go out to any booster organization.
Mr. Master, this is where the confusion is for me. That policy refers to the district's booster organizations. This is not a district booster organization. So how could we enact our policies onto an entity that is not ours? How can we hold them accountable to our policies?
Because they're out there collecting money for our services.
But they're doing that as an independent entity. They're not doing all that they did was, all that this board did was acknowledge their group.
Correct.
That's it. That's it. So,
And publicly, the solicitor stood with them and said that they were gonna assist them with from the ground up.
as she explained, they do as a courtesy.
And show me another booster group they've done it for in our district.
No one else has asked this here. Many of them have already pre-existed. I can show you one that we've done in multiple
I'm
districts.
sure you have, Christian. I know you didn't get in the middle of this. You're just kind of stuck to dealing with it. So I understand and I appreciate that. I'm simply asking because parents and individuals have come to me and stated concerns. That is the only reason. So I would love for this to be, checks and balances to be there and for it to work out and benefit the kids. However, there's been many, many, many times that the kids have been burned by these groups, and I don't want to see it happen again. Because it happened to my children many times. And I'm not gonna let it happen while I'm sitting here, I'm sorry.
Christian, what all organizations would fall under this?
Anybody that we recognize.
So who all do we recognize?
Yeah, do we have a
That
list?
would be a list that's usually kept by the board.
That's my concern. If we recognize this group, then I agree with Gina, but if we don't recognize this group, then this needs to go away.
Agreed.
If we're wasting time if we're not gonna recognize them.
If
If we're gonna recognize them, then yeah, I agree with Gina, they should be on the up and up. But we gotta decide if we're recognizing them, and I thought 3 months ago, we said we're not having nothing to do with it. So that's what I'm.
We don't have any legal authority.
But the issue is, this board cannot determine how or they spend their money. So we can't dictate anything towards them. So if you want a copy of their financial statements, you should approach them and they'll give them to you. That's not for this school district or anybody else sitting up here we're wasting our time.
In my eyes,
To your point, it's like and I know it's like a PTA or we don't handle their finances. They are a separate 501(c)(3) organization, just like any major or large nonprofit organization such as Susan G. Komen or something like that. They're regulated by the state. So if there would be a problem with their books, that has to be turned over to the Attorney General's office, and it's looked through the state system. It looks at 501(c)(3)s and makes sure that they're adhering to their mission statement and their bylaws, and that their money isn't a problem. So they fall under those laws, not the school board's discretion. I understand that policy exists, we recognize them, I think that's there just to get that report and put it away so that we know that they had a clean audit. If you want to do that, that's fine, but I'm not saying that we're able to request their bank records and request and look at that, and nor would I want anyone here to take on that responsibility, which was my advice to Mr. Esper at the time when he was requesting to file the taxes was, I don't think that's appropriate as you're the business manager here, and he was right to call me. I don't think that that's appropriate to get involved into their finances. That's for the state board to investigate, and if you truly have evidence or you have suspicion of that, then that's probably who you need to contact.
And again, our policy states that we can request their bylaws, their board, and their audit, and that's what I requested.
Yes.
Okay,
And again.
I believe a letter was sent to them requesting that, if I understand.
okay. How about we resend a letter for the documents that we can get, that we're supposed to have access to? Once we review those, then we can decide on what to do. We have nothing to do with this.
Organization or all, either we do it for one or all of them, but which one are we doing? Why are we taking on one person? So we have.
Well, that goes back to my point of like, what is the list of these organizations? I don't know that list.
That might be the place to start.
maybe we get that list to start. And if it's 100, I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do anything because those kids are out there and scrape every penny they can get standing in front of John Eagle. Who are we to regulate them? It's up to the parents who put the effort in.
I don't want to regulate any of these organizations.
We talk more about this in education, public.
Yeah.
I'm worried about my son going back to school February. I'm worried about your son going back to school. Everybody, that's what's important. Not what Mark Kulas is doing with the boost. Is there anything else in any whole business?
The motion didn't pass.
For life.
Is there any other old business?
I just have one comment, and I should have addressed this earlier, I apologize. In 6A1, I wasn't here last week, I'm sure Mr. Esper went into better detail, but just for clarification for the record, this is not an indication, the motion passed. It's not an indication or a commitment in any way, shape, or form to raise taxes, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'm sure you explained, we do this annually according to the Act 1 index. In lieu of, we would have had to pass the preliminary budget.
We wouldn't.
Yes,
If we
so
so choose to.
all this does is gives us the option at the time to raise taxes up to that percentage. It's not a commitment that we are raising taxes, right?
Yes, there's no plan. to
Yeah,
raise
I'm sure you
taxes.
probably
There's no-
explained that last week. I apologize I wasn't here, but I just wanted to.
And it's hard to do a preliminary budget now, especially during COVID, and we have early retirement incentives, things like that. So a lot of that happens in the spring. So that's why most districts do this out of caution.
And we did the same thing last December.
Yeah, we've done it annually since I've been on here. I just wanted to put that on the record that it's not an indication that a tax increase is evident.
Well, if we wanted to raise taxes above the Act 1 index, and then I think it's about 1.06 mils, then we'd have to prepare the preliminary budget and then do the referendum, then it would go to the voters to see if it would pass, and there's a whole legal proceeding to that. Since the board said that they had no desire to raise taxes at all, as most boards do, and let alone 1.06, it was unnecessary with all the changes that we have coming up.
Thank you.
Any other old business?
One more, sorry, Matt. I just wanted to, there's so much negativity, I just wanted to shine some good light. Our meeting last month was so early that this happened after it, but Richard Bazey from Schultz Ford donated a bunch of bikes to the kids at West Mifflin. And Sergeant DeCarbo from ROTC, Ray Ross, one of our teachers, and our very own Gina Engler worked diligently to get all these bikes passed out to these kids. And I just wanted to give them some recognition and thank them for what you do. I know you don't want it, but I thank you. And I thank Mr. Ross and Mr. DeCarbo and the mayor. And just to shine some light on what, work that good people do. It's always negative. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any other old business? New business?
I got something. Mr. Scholes, in the Ligonier School District and the Bethel Park School District, they are vaccinating their teachers. Do we have a plan or anything to do that?
We're working with the IU as well as with the health department. They'll be dictating that. Right now, they're still in the 1A in Allegheny County. And they just expanded that. We were in the 1B group, but our nurses have been doing a very nice job. Mrs. Wells brought some information on vaccinations this week as well. And we're getting that out. But as far as them coming in as the health department or the IU personnel, we have not had any dates set yet.
Okay, thank you.
Will they set a block aside at the hospital and do that for them? Is that something that they can do?
I
as well? Do they set aside a block of time for teachers at the hospital,
Yes.
hospitals?
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Costello. Any other new business? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Mrs. Costello,
Second.
second by Mr. Bennett. Meeting adjourned.